All right, let's now talk about independent and dependent events. So far, we've focused entirely upon independent events. And independent events are the occurrence of one event does not affect the likelihood that another event will occur. So in a previous video, I used the words with replacement. What this meant is that the number of outcomes from one event to the next remained the same. For instance, if I roll this die, there are 6 possible outcomes. If I roll it again, there will still be 6 outcomes. And if I roll it again, there will still be 6 possible outcomes. No matter how many times I do it, I will always have 6 possible outcomes. Same thing goes with a spinner. I have 8 possible outcomes in a spinner. I have 8 outcomes. If I spin it once, I will get 8 outcomes. If I spin it again, I will still get 8 outcomes. And I could keep repeating it, and I will always get 8 outcomes. And the same goes for my coin toss. Every time I toss a coin, I have just 2 possible outcomes. It will never change. It will always be 2 outcomes. These are all independent events. All right, let's now talk about dependent events. And dependent events is defined as the occurrence of one event does affect the likelihood that the other events will occur. And words that we've used or will use with dependent events are things that we'll say are without replacement. Without replacement. So what does this mean? Well, if I have a bag of marbles, and in this bag there are 7 possible outcomes. If I go to pull a marble out of the bag, there are 7 outcomes. Now if I pull one marble from the bag, so I go and I take a marble out of the bag, and I leave it out of the bag, and then I'm going to go in and pull yet another marble out of the bag. Instead of there now being 7 outcomes, there'll only be 6 outcomes. And there are 6 outcomes because there are now 6 marbles left in the bag. So my probability is going to change from the first pull to the second pull. So instead of it being out of 7 outcomes, whatever the probability is, or the favorable outcomes out of 7 possible outcomes, it'll now be out of 6 outcomes. And that is what dependent events or dependent probability is. All right, let's look at another example of dependent probability where we are not going to have replacement occur. Let's say we have these 7 socks in a drawer. We have 4 of them are brown and we have 3 of them are green. That means we have a total of 7 possible outcomes. If I put my hand in the drawer and I randomly pull out a sock, my probability would be based on 7 outcomes because there are 7 socks in the drawer. Well, let's say I put my hand in the drawer, I randomly select a green one, and now I'm going to go back in the drawer, and instead of my probabilities being based on 7 outcomes, they're now going to be based on the 6 remaining socks that are in there. So the next set of probabilities will be based on 6 outcomes instead of 7 outcomes. All right, let's look at another example of dependent events without replacement. In this picture, I have 11 students. And I have 11 students that I can pick from, and let's pretend that I'm going to have 2 of those students go to the board, and I want to calculate the probability that I will pick first one student and then another. Well, once I pick one student, that was out of 11 possible outcomes. That student has been chosen and is no longer available in the group to be chosen from. So then the next time I pick a student, it's going to be out of a group of 10 students. So the number of possible outcomes has now changed from the first to the second. So in this video, we just looked at the difference between independent and dependent events. In the next video, we'll look at how to calculate dependent events and independent events.